The world believes that power is found in the instant flash, the sudden breakthrough, the deafening roar. But the profound truth is this: power is forged in the silence, the necessary stillness where waiting becomes preparation. Tonight, we follow the story of Elian, a young man who possessed the heart of a champion, but lacked the one virtue required for true greatness: patience. He lived in the shadow of his own potential, frustrated by the world's seeming refusal to reward his immediate efforts. Elian was always ready to run a marathon, but he would not spend a single day stretching. His story is the mirror reflection of our own struggle with impatience, our need for instant gratification, and the devastating cost of confusing motion with progress. Elian believed his worth was measured by his immediate success. But what happened when his dreams crumbled, and all that was left was the uncomfortable silence? Stay with us. The turning point in Elian's life will challenge everything you think you know about achieving your greatest aspirations. Many years ago, in a small town surrounded by hills, where the air smelled permanently of damp soil and kiln smoke, lived Elian. His hands were blessed. When he touched clay, it seemed to whisper secrets to him. His bowls were elegant, his vases impossibly delicate. His weakness, however, was speed. Elian was a whirlwind in the workshop, while the other apprentices, older and more seasoned, worked with slow, methodical precision. Elian rushed. He wanted the perfect pot now, not tomorrow. "Why wait for the wheel to settle?" he'd mutter, pushing the clay faster than it was ready. "Why spend a day drying when the heat of the kiln is waiting?" His master, an old woman named Maeve, whose eyes held the quiet wisdom of 1,000 fires, watched him with a gentle sadness. Maeve's pots were famous throughout the region, not for their flashiness, but for their incredible durability and soul. They held the essence of the clay, the earth, and the patience of her hands. The beginning of Elian's struggle was marked by shattered ambitions. He would spend hours meticulously forming a magnificent urn, only to ruin it in the final, crucial step, the drying and the firing. He rushed the drying process, forcing the moisture out too quickly. When the urn was placed in the kiln, the unseen, deep-seated flaws, the air bubbles trapped by his haste, the uneven stresses created by his impatience, would tear the structure apart. He pulled pieces from the kiln that were cracked, warped, or utterly exploded. They were monuments to his lack of patience. The sound of a new crack forming inside the cooled kiln was the sound of his hope breaking. One devastating evening, after finding his finest piece, a vase he was certain would win the regional prize, reduced to 3 sharp, useless shards, Elian collapsed onto his stool. His hands, usually so confident with the clay, were trembling. He felt humiliated. He saw his weakness, not as a technical flaw, but as a moral failure, a lack of confidence that made him rush, as if he secretly feared the world would change its mind about him if he didn't finish right now. He stood up, his voice hesitant, thick with dust and defeat. He approached Maeve, who was silently glazing the small, plain cup. "Master," he choked out, his eyes tear-filled, I am wasting my life. The others succeed. I fail. Why does the clay reward slowness? I work harder. I am faster. I have the vision. But every piece, it dies in the fire. Maeve did not offer words of immediate comfort. She simply asked, "Tell me, Elian, what is the silence before the roar of the kiln's fire?" Elian thought, "It is nothing. It is just time wasted." He answered, "It is the cooling, the drying, the waiting." "No," Maeve said, turning the little cup in her wrinkled hands. "That silence is the preparation. You confuse waiting with inactivity. The clay is not waiting. It is changing its very composition. It is shedding the water, tightening its bonds, becoming solid so that it can endure the fire. You want the roar, the success, the recognition, but you refuse the silence." Maeve told him of a legendary archer who could fire an arrow with blinding speed. But because he never spent time in the quiet stillness before the shot, the time to synchronize his heart rate, his breathing, and the wind, his arrows always missed the heart of the target. His speed was wasted effort. It was the patience to hold the bow taut, to feel the strain, to pause for just one extra breath that separated the master from the quick draw. That night, the lesson began. Elian's struggles transformed into small, deliberate actions. He stopped trying to rush the wheel. He learned to listen to the whisper of the clay, to feel its resistance, and to surrender to its natural rhythm. His focus narrowed from the finished product to the single, perfect motion of his hands. Elian, meticulously carving a small line, taking twice as long as before. He is shown carefully monitoring the moisture in the drying room, not touching the pieces. He walks away from a finished but still wet piece, his back to it, forcing himself to wait. He started measuring his days, not by the number of pots he made, but by the quality of his stillness. He embraced the periods of nothingness, the hours where his clay sat, untouched, in the drying room. This was not downtime. This was the intense, necessary training of the material. This was the transformation of patience into preparation. After weeks of this deliberate slowness, Elian placed a vase into the kiln. He felt fear, but it was a different fear. Not the fear of missing out, but the fear of disrupting the natural order. When the kiln was cool, he opened the heavy door. They stood, perfectly formed, rich in color, utterly solid. It had endured the fire because it had been allowed to endure the silence. Tears welled up in Elian's eyes, but this time they were tears of understanding, not despair. He realized that the waiting had not tested the clay. It had tested him. The clay was patient. He was not. By forcing himself to adopt patience, he had given the piece and himself the confidence to survive. Years later, the regional competition arrived. Elian brought a single piece, a large, simple water jar. It was not the flashiest, nor the most colorful. It had no elaborate carvings, but it had a solidity, a truthfulness that was undeniable. His old rival, a quick and clever potter named Jarek, displayed 24 dazzling, ornate pieces. vases that were completed in days, painted with fierce, immediate energy. Jarek looked at Elian's plain jar and sneered. "Still moving like a snail, Elian. Where is the roar? Where is the excitement?" Elian just smiled. His hands no longer trembled. His answer came not from his mouth, but from the judges. The final test of the competition was not about beauty, it was about integrity. The judge took a heavy mallet and struck each finalist's piece lightly. Jarek's beautiful rushed vases, for all their splendor, chipped or fractured with the impact. Their superficial beauty could not hide the impatience baked into their core. Then the judge approached Elian's water jar. He struck it, slightly harder than the others. The jar did not chip. It did not fracture. It merely rang with a deep, confident resonance, like a bell struck true. It possessed the inner strength of rock because it had been given the gift of time, the gift of patience as preparation. The roar, but only after mastering the silence. He had learned that every moment of waiting, the time spent planning, studying, resting, or just allowing the conditions to align, is not a void. It is the most critical part of the work. He became the master potter, known not just for his beautiful creations, but for the profound calm he carried. He taught his own apprentices the hardest lesson of all: how to be still. He showed them that rushing is merely a mask for a lack of confidence in one's own ability to endure the process. True confidence is the stillness that says, "I have prepared thoroughly. Now I can wait for the perfect moment." His life had changed. He no longer chased success. He created the foundation upon which success was required to stand. We all stand before our own kilns, waiting for the results of our efforts. We are desperate for the heat, the light, the roar of recognition. But stop. Look at the silence. Are you confusing waiting with being stagnant? The universal life lesson is this: if you are impatient, you are not prepared. You fear the test because you skipped the essential steps. When you refuse to be still, when you rush the process, you are baking in the cracks of your own failure. Embrace the silence. Use your periods of waiting to tighten your bonds, to shed the unnecessary moisture of distraction, and to strengthen your core. Patience is not passive. It is active preparation. It is the ultimate display of self-discipline. How much time are you wasting by rushing things that require deliberate slowness? Give yourself the gift of patience. Give your dream the time it needs to dry completely, so that when it finally faces the fire, it doesn't break, it rings. The roar of success is always preceded by the profound, demanding silence of preparation.